In a world where fortunes are exchanged as easily as promises, a young woman finds her life sold to a man whose heart has long forgotten how to feel. Beneath glittering chandeliers and whispered scandals, she is thrust into a bargain meant to save her family, yet it may cost her far more than freedom. As shadows from his past tighten their grip and a dangerous secret edges toward revelation, desire and duty collide in a battle neither of them is prepared to fight. Before we begin, tell me, from where are you listening to this story tonight? And what do you love most about period romances, the mystery, the passion, or the impossible choices? In the shadowed halls of Blackwood Manor, where the gas lamps flickered like hesitant confessions, Amelia Harrington stood before the grand mirror in her chamber. Her reflection stared back, pale and unyielding, framed by the heavy velvet drapes that muffled the world outside. At 19, she was a vision of fragile elegance. Her gown of midnight blue silk clinging to her slender form, the high neckline adorned with delicate lace that whispered of propriety and hidden storms. Her chestnut hair was piled high in soft curls, pinned with pearls that caught the dim light, but her emerald eyes held a depth of sorrow that no jewel could mask. The weight of the evening pressed upon her like the corset cinched too tight. Tonight her fate would be sealed, not by her heart, but by the cold arithmetic of dowries and debts. Her father, Lord Edmund Harrington, had gambled away the family estate in a haze of desperation, leaving Amelia as the last bargaining chip. Whispers in the drawing rooms of London spoke of it already. The Duke of Ravenswood, Alexander Blackwood, had paid a fortune to claim her hand. A duke, brooding and reclusive, his name synonymous with power and isolation. What did he want with a girl like her, whose only inheritance was a tarnished name and a spirit unbroken by ruin? She smoothed her skirts, her fingers trembling. The carriage waited below, its horses stamping impatiently in the fog-shrouded drive. "Amelia, my dear." Her father's voice had cracked earlier that day, his once proud face etched with regret. "This is our salvation. The Duke. He is a man of honor. He will provide." Honor! The word tasted bitter on her tongue. She had seen the contracts, the sums that dwarfed her dreams, thousands of pounds exchanged for a lifetime in his shadow. No love, no courtship, just a transaction veiled in wedding vows. As the clock struck 8, a knock echoed through the room. Her maid, Eliza, bustled in, eyes wide with a mix of pity and excitement. "Miss, the coachman says it's time. The Duke's ball awaits." Amelia nodded, steeling herself. The journey to Ravenswood Castle would take hours, through the misty English countryside, where ancient oaks bent like sentinels guarding secrets. What secrets did the Duke harbour? Rumours painted him as a man scarred by loss, his late wife's death 5 years prior, a tragedy that had walled him off from society. Cold, calculating, they said, incapable of tenderness. Descending the grand staircase, Amelia felt the eyes of the household upon her. Servants paused in their duties, their gazes a tapestry of sympathy and curiosity. Outside, the night air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and impending rain. She stepped into the carriage, the door closing with a finality that echoed in her chest. As the wheels began to turn, jolting over the cobblestones, a single tear escaped her eye. She brushed it away fiercely. This was no time for weakness. She would face him, this Duke who had bought her freedom at the price of her own. The road wound through darkened villages, lanterns glowing like distant stars. Amelia's mind raced with fragments of her life left behind, the wild gardens of her childhood home, where she had dreamed of adventures beyond the rigid codes of Victorian society, the forbidden novels hidden under her mattress, tales of passion and rebellion that now seemed like cruel jests. Her mother had died young, leaving her to navigate the treacherous waters of high society alone, guided by a father more interested in cards than counsel. And now, this. Hours blurred into a monotonous rhythm. The carriage's sway lulling her into uneasy thoughts. What would he be like? Tall and imposing, no doubt, with the sharp features of aristocracy. Would his eyes hold warmth or the ice of indifference? She imagined their first meeting, the grand ballroom of the castle. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbows on polished marble floors, guests in their finery swirling like colourful spectres. She would curtsy, her voice steady as she uttered the expected pleasantries. But beneath it all, a fire simmered. She was no mere ornament to be purchased and displayed. A sudden jolt pulled her from reverie. The carriage halted abruptly, horses whinnying in protest. "What's this?" she murmured, leaning toward the window. The driver called out, his voice muffled by the door. "Bandits on the road ahead, miss. Stay inside." Her heart pounded. Bandits in these parts? The countryside was not without peril, but this felt too timed, too ominous. Shadows moved beyond the glass, figures on horseback, cloaked and urgent. One approached the carriage, lantern in hand. "Open up!" a rough voice demanded. Amelia shrank back, her hand clutching the small dagger hidden in her reticule, a gift from her father for such journeys. The door rattled but held. Shouts ensued, then the crack of a whip. The carriage lurched forward again, careening wildly as the driver urged the horses on. Gunshots? No, just echoes in the night. Or were they? By the time they reached Ravenswood Castle, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. The structure loomed like a Gothic sentinel, towers piercing the mist, ivy clinging to weathered stone. Servants rushed out, their faces etched with concern. "Miss Harrington, the Duke awaits." Amelia stepped down, legs unsteady, the night's terror lingering like a bruise. Inside, the halls were a labyrinth of opulence, tapestries depicting ancient battles, suits of armor standing guard. A footman led her to an antechamber where she was to refresh before the ceremony. But as she caught her breath, a figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair tousled, eyes the colour of storm clouds. Alexander Blackwood, the Duke of Ravenswood. He regarded her not with triumph, but with a flicker of something unreadable, regret, desire. "Miss Harrington," he said, his voice deep and measured, carrying the weight of command. "You have arrived. I trust the journey was not too arduous?" His gaze swept over her, lingering a moment too long on the dishevelled lace of her gown. She met his eyes, chin lifted. "It had its trials, Your Grace. But I am here." In that instant, as silence stretched between them, Amelia felt the hook of destiny sink deep. This man had paid a fortune for her body and name, but her soul, that he would have to earn. And in the depths of his guarded heart, she sensed a man who knew nothing of love, yet might learn if the shadows of their pasts did not consume them first. The grand clock in the hall chimed, signalling the start of the ball. Guests would arrive soon, sealing their fates in dance and whispers. But Amelia wondered, could a fortune buy more than a bride? Could it buy a heart? Word count, 872. The morning light filtered through the tall, arched windows of Ravenswood Castle, casting long shadows across the polished oak floors. Amelia Harrington stood in the antechamber, her heart still racing from the night's perils. The air carried the faint scent of beeswax and aged leather, a reminder of the castle's storied past. Servants moved with quiet efficiency, their liveried uniforms crisp, bowing as they passed. She smoothed her gown once more, the silk now rumpled from the journey, but her posture remained straight, a habit drilled into her since childhood. A maid appeared, older than Eliza, with kind eyes and a starched cap. "Miss Harrington, allow me to assist you. The Duke has arranged for your quarters in the East Wing." Her name was Mrs. Thorne, the housekeeper, who led Amelia through winding corridors lined with portraits of stern ancestors, their painted eyes following her every step. The castle felt alive, breathing with history. Massive fireplaces crackled softly, wards against the chill that seeped from the stone walls. Outside, the grounds stretched endlessly, manicured lawns giving way to wild moors, where mist clung like a shroud. Amelia's new chamber was a far cry from the modest rooms at Blackwood Manor. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in heavy brocade curtains of deep crimson. A vanity table held silver-backed brushes and a crystal decanter of water. She sank into a velvet armchair, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. This was her world now, or so the contracts decreed. The Duke's fortune had salvaged her family's name, but at what cost to her own? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal a young woman, perhaps 20, with auburn hair and a gentle smile. "Good morning, miss. I'm Lady Beatrice Langford, the Duke's sister. He asked me to welcome you." Beatrice glided in, her gown of soft lavender muslin flowing elegantly, the modest puffed sleeves and high collar befitting a lady of quality. She carried a tray with tea and scones, steam rising invitingly. Amelia rose, curtsying with practiced grace. "Lady Beatrice, it's a pleasure. I am Amelia Harrington." Beatrice set the tray down, her expression warm yet tinged with caution. "Please, call me Beatrice in private. My brother can be formidable, but he means well. The household is abuzz with your arrival. The ball last night was merely the prelude. Today we prepare for the formal announcements." She poured tea, the china clinking softly. "Sugar, the Duke insists on Darjeeling, imported fresh from the colonies." Amelia accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Thank you. The journey was trying, but I am grateful to be here." She sipped, the bitter notes grounding her. Beatrice settled opposite, her posture impeccable, embodying the rigid etiquette of their class. Women like them navigated life through subtle gestures, a fan's flick for yes, a averted gaze for no. Conversation danced around propriety, never straying to the indelicate. As they spoke, Beatrice shared glimpses of castle life. Mornings began with family prayers in the chapel, followed by lessons or embroidery for the ladies. Afternoons brought walks in the rose garden or visits from local gentry. Evenings were for dinners, where silverware gleamed under candlelight, and topics veered safely to weather, hunts, or the Queen's latest decrees. "Alexander keeps to himself mostly," Beatrice confided, her voice lowering. "Since Eliza's passing, well, the castle has been quieter, but you bring fresh air, Amelia. Perhaps you'll coax him out." Eliza, the late Duchess. The name hung in the air like smoke. Amelia nodded, masking her curiosity. Her own life had been simpler, though no less constrained. At home, days blurred into teas with neighbours, where gossip flowed like the Thames, whispers of scandals, matches made in haste. Her father's debts had shadowed every gathering, forcing her to smile through pitying glances. Now, elevated to Duchess-in-waiting, she felt the weight of expectations. Would she fit among these ancient stones? The door creaked open again, admitting a footman with a sealed letter on a silver salver. "For Miss Harrington, from Lord Harrington." Amelia's pulse quickened. She broke the wax seal, her father's script unfolding before her eyes. "My dearest Amelia, the arrangements proceed apace. The Duke's solicitors confirm the dowry transfer, £20,000, enough to restore our lands. You have done us proud. Hold your head high. This union secures our legacy. Write soon of your settling in. Your loving father, Edmund." She folded the letter, a knot forming in her throat. Pride, or chains forged in ink? Beatrice watched sympathetically. "Family matters weigh heavy. Mine does too. Alexander worries over my prospects, though I'm 25 and content here." Their talk turned to lighter things. The upcoming hunt ball, the latest fashions from Paris, wide skirts tempered by crinolines, bonnets adorned with feathers. Amelia described her embroidery, a skill honed to pass idle hours. Laughter came tentatively, a brief spark in the somber halls, yet beneath it tension simmered. Servants' footsteps echoed too purposefully, eyes darting away when met. As noon approached, Beatrice rose. "Come, let's walk the gallery. It will lift your spirits." They strolled arm in arm, past suits of armor that gleamed dully, relics of wars long past. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint draught from unseen cracks. Amelia admired a tapestry of knights and ladies, its colors faded but vivid in story. Then a murmur drifted from an adjoining room, voices low, urgent. Beatrice paused, her face paling. The study. Alexander meets with his steward. They drew nearer, unable to resist. Through the half-open door, the Duke's voice rumbled, deep and controlled. "The Harrington debts are cleared, but watch the borders. That carriage incident last night, too convenient. Ensure the gates are secured." A reply, hushed. "Yes, Your Grace." "And the whispers in the village?" "They say the old rival stirs." Amelia froze, her hand tightening on Beatrice's arm. Rival, the carriage bandits, not chance but threat. The Duke turned then, spotting them. His storm-grey eyes narrowed, not in anger but warning. "Ladies, this is not for idle ears." Beatrice pulled Amelia away, whispering, "Pay it no mind. Old feuds linger here." But as they retreated, a chill settled in Amelia's bones. The castle's grandeur hid shadows, and her arrival had stirred them. What enemy lurked, and why now? That evening, as twilight fell, a single raven circled the towers, its cry piercing the dusk. Amelia watched from her window, unease coiling like fog. The Duke had paid a fortune for her, but safety, that remained a fragile illusion. And in the quiet, she wondered if love could bloom amid such thorns, or if peril would claim her first. The days following Amelia's arrival blurred into a rhythm of rigid formality, each one tightening the invisible noose around her future. Ravenswood Castle, with its echoing halls and watchful portraits, felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage. Mornings began with the tolling of the chapel bell, summoning the household for prayers led by the stern vicar, Mr. Hargrove. Amelia knelt beside Beatrice on the cold stone floor, her knees aching against the unyielding surface, while Alexander's voice joined the litany from the front pew, deep, resonant, but distant, as if his thoughts wandered elsewhere. After services, breakfast unfolded in the morning room, a vast space dominated by a mahogany table laden with silver platters of kippers, eggs poached in cream, and fresh rolls still warm from the ovens. Alexander presided at the head, his broad frame clad in a tailored coat of charcoal wool, the high collar framing his sharp jawline. He spoke little, his storm-grey eyes flicking occasionally to Amelia, assessing rather than engaging. "The estate accounts require attention today," he announced one crisp morning, 3 days after her arrival. "Beatrice, see that Miss Harrington is acquainted with the library. Knowledge is a lady's quiet armour." Beatrice nodded, her lavender gown rustling as she rose. "Of course, brother. The collection is unparalleled. Volumes from the continent, even forbidden philosophies smuggled past censors." She linked arms with Amelia, leading her away from the table where Alexander lingered over his coffee, the steam curling like unspoken questions. As they walked, Beatrice whispered, "He tests you subtly. Show interest in the books. It softens his edges." The library proved a sanctuary, its walls lined floor to ceiling with leather-bound tomes that smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. Sunlight slanted through leaded windows, illuminating ladders on brass rails and a massive globe in the corner. Amelia trailed her fingers along spines etched with gold. Shakespeare, Austen, treatises on estate management. For the first time since arriving, a spark of genuine curiosity ignited. She selected a volume of poetry, Byron's verses, passionate and defiant, and settled into a wingback chair by the fire. Beatrice excused herself mid-afternoon, leaving Amelia alone with the crackling flames. The peace shattered with the arrival of a courier, his horse lathered and breathing hard in the courtyard below. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, and the heavy oak door swung open. It was Mr. Ellis, the Duke's steward, a wiry man in his 50s with a perpetual frown and ink-stained fingers. His face was ashen, a sealed missive clutched in his hand. "Miss Harrington," he gasped, bowing hastily. "Urgent business from London for the Duke, but it concerns you directly." Before she could respond, Alexander strode in, alerted by the commotion. His expression darkened as Ellis handed over the letter, the wax seal bearing the Harrington crest, broken now like their fortunes. Alexander scanned the contents, his knuckles whitening on the paper. "Damnation," he muttered, then looked to Amelia. "Your father writes of a complication, creditors in the city, vultures circling the remnants of your family's holdings. They demand immediate assurance of the union, or they seize Blackwood Manor outright." He paced, the floorboards creaking under his boots. "The agreement stipulated discretion until the formal betrothal, but this forces our hand." Amelia's stomach twisted. She rose, the book tumbling forgotten to the rug. "What must be done, Your Grace?" Her voice held steady, though fear clawed at her chest. The weight of her father's recklessness crashed down anew, not just debts, but the spectre of homelessness for the servants who had raised her, the tenants who tilled the worn fields. He stopped, facing her squarely. "A public announcement. Tonight, at the assembly in the village hall, the local gentry must witness our intent. It will deter the wolves." His tone brooked no argument, but his eyes softened fractionally. "I paid the fortune to shield you from this ruin, Amelia. Refuse, and your family falls. Accept, and we proceed as planned, marriage in a fortnight, here at the castle." Hesitation gripped her like ice. This was no gentle courtship, no stolen glances in a garden. It was a rupture, thrusting her from shadowed arrival to society's glaring stage. The social cost loomed, whispers of a bought bride, pitying stares from women who had debuted in grand seasons while she scraped by on faded finery. And Alexander, did he see her as salvation or salvage? I need a moment," she said, her cheeks flushing. Refusal meant betrayal of her blood, yet yielding stripped her of choice. Ellis cleared his throat. "Time presses, miss. The creditor's agent arrives by dusk. Without this, the Duke's own reputation tangles in the scandal, accusations of false promises." Alexander nodded curtly. "The rules of this world are unforgiving, Amelia. Etiquette demands poise under scrutiny. Every glance, every word will be dissected. Vigilance is our ally now. Publicly, we present unity. Privately." He trailed off, a rare vulnerability cracking his facade. "Privately, we navigate as equals." She met his gaze, searching for deceit, finding only resolve shadowed by weariness. The rival from the overheard conversation lingered in her mind. Perhaps this pressure stemmed from deeper intrigue, but concrete obstacles pressed. The protocol of the announcement, a veto from no one but her own heart, and debts that chained them all. As the sun dipped low, casting the library in amber, Amelia straightened her spine. "Very well, Your Grace. I accept for my family's sake, and perhaps for ours." The words sealed it, altering her status from guest to betrothed, the castle's walls closing tighter. Yet, as servants bustled to prepare her gown, a resplendent emerald silk with pearl buttons and a modest train, a footman delivered another note, this one anonymous, slipped under the door. "Beware the raven's shadow," it read, the ink fresh and ominous. Amelia crumpled it. Heart pounding, the status quo shattered, but what new perils awaited in the village lights? And could she trust the man who had bought her future? Or was the true threat closer than the creditor's grasp? The carriage rattled along the winding lane toward the village hall. the wheels crunching over gravel strewn with autumn leaves. Amelia sat rigidly beside Beatrice, her emerald gown whispering against the leather seats. The fabric, a gift from the Duke's seamstress, hugged her waist with intricate pleats, the modest bodice edged in cream lace that rose chastely to her throat. A single pearl brooch, Alexander's mother's heirloom, pinned hastily that afternoon, gleamed at her collar, its cool weight a constant reminder of the role she now played. It felt like a chain, disguised as treasure. Outside, the English countryside rolled by in muted tones, hedgerows heavy with frost, distant spires piercing the slate-grey sky. Dusk had fallen early, lanterns flickering to life along the path like wary eyes. Beatrice adjusted her shawl, her voice light but laced with concern. "The assembly will be modest, Amelia. Local squires, the vicar, a few families from the moors. Smile, nod, and let Alexander lead. Whispers travel faster than the wind here." Amelia nodded, her gloved hands clasped tight in her lap. The anonymous note burned in her memory. "Beware the raven's shadow." Its words a riddle she dared not voice. Who sent it? A jealous servant, an old enemy of the Harringtons, or something tied to the Duke's shadowed past? She glanced out the window, spotting riders in the tree line, perhaps gamekeepers or watchers. Paranoia, she chided herself. Yet the carriage bandits lingered too, their silhouettes haunting her dreams. The hall loomed ahead, a sturdy timber building with mullioned windows glowing warmly. Carriages clustered outside, liveried drivers chatting in low tones. As they descended, the air carried scents of wood smoke and roasting chestnuts from nearby stalls. Villagers mingled on the green, farmers in rough wool, gentry in finer velvets, their conversations halting as Amelia stepped into view. Eyes turned, assessing. She was the stranger, the Duke's sudden betrothed, bought with a fortune that eclipsed their yearly yields. Inside, the space buzzed with restrained energy. Long tables groaned under punch bowls and platters of cold meats, candles in iron sconces casting flickering shadows. A string quartet played softly in the corner, violins weaving through the hum of voices. Alexander waited near the hearth, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure in black broadcloth, a silver watch chain glinting across his waistcoat. He inclined his head as they approached, his expression a mask of ducal composure. "Miss Harrington, you look composed." "Composure is all one can muster, Your Grace," she replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. His gaze lingered on the brooch, a micro-gesture, a softening at the corners of his eyes, gone in an instant. He offered his arm, guiding her through the crowd. Whispers followed like smoke. "The Harrington girl. Debts cleared overnight. Bought and bound, they say." The vicar, Mr. Hargrove, approached first, his clerical robes swishing. A portly man with a ruddy face, he pumped Alexander's hand. "Your Grace, a joyous announcement. And Miss Harrington, welcome to our humble fold." His smile was broad, but his eyes flicked to her gown, noting the subtle wear at the hems from her hurried journey. "We pray this union blesses both houses." Amelia curtsied, the motion fluid from years of practice. "Thank you, Vicar. It is an honor." Yet as he turned away, a group of women nearby, wives of minor landowners, their dresses in muted taupes and greys, exchanged glances. One, Mrs. Lydia Thornwood, a sharp-featured matron with a lace cap, leaned into her companion. "Fortune indeed. But does she bring more than a pretty face? The Harringtons were always one step from the poorhouse." The words stung, a subtle humiliation slicing through the warmth. Class frictions simmered here, where old bloodlines eyed newcomers with suspicion. Amelia's cheeks warmed, but she held her chin high, refusing to falter. Alexander's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch, accidental yet deliberate, as he steered her toward the punch table. "Ignore the barbs," he murmured, low enough for only her ears. They envy what they cannot touch. His defense was minimal, a quiet shield, but it sparked something, a shared silence as they stood apart from the throng. The quartet struck up a waltz, couples forming lines. He extended a hand. "Dance with me. Let them see unity." She placed her palm in his, the leather of his glove warm against hers. They moved into the steps, bodies close but not touching, propriety's invisible barrier. His lead was firm, guiding her through turns with effortless grace. For a moment the room faded, the friction of stairs, the weight of debts. His breath grazed her temple. "You wear the brooch well. It suits you, more than it ever did her." Her, the late Duchess. The admission hung between them, a small advance cracking his reserve. Amelia's heart quickened, not from the dance, but the vulnerability in his tone. "It is an honor to bear it, Your Grace." Their eyes met, a prolonged gaze heavy with unspoken questions. Was this the start of something beyond transaction? Yet shadows stirred at the edges. In the dim corner by the doors, a figure lurked, a man in a hooded greatcoat, face obscured, watching their every turn. He slipped a note to a serving boy, who darted away. The antagonist's presence, unseen but felt, coiled tension into the evening. Who was he? A creditor's spy? Or the rival from the Duke's study? As the music swelled, Mrs. Thornwood approached under pretense of congratulations. "Such a whirlwind match. One hears the Duke paid handsomely. 20,000, was it? A fortune for faded glory." Her smile was honeyed poison, the class jab landing sharp. Alexander's jaw tightened, but Amelia responded first, voice cool. "Fortune builds alliances, madam, as does character." The matron blinked, retreating with a huff. Applause rippled as the dance ended, but later, as they returned to the carriage, a footman pressed a folded broadsheet into Beatrice's hand, a local gazette, fresh off the press. "Evening edition, miss?" She scanned it, paling. "Oh, Amelia. A note in the society column. Duke of Ravenswood secures Harrington heiress amid urgent debts. A timely salvation, or a shadowed bargain?" The words chilled the air, a visible social consequence rippling outward. Alexander crumpled the paper, his eyes darkening. Gossip mills grind fast. But this, it's no accident. As the carriage pulled away, the hooded man mounted a horse in the distance, vanishing into the night. The integration tested, acceptance fragile. Amelia clutched the brooch tighter. A small emotional bridge formed with Alexander, but the shadows deepened. What bargain had they struck, and who profited from its unraveling? The storm hit without mercy as the carriage barreled through the night, rain lashing the windows like furious accusations. Amelia clutched the edge of the seat, her emerald gown sodden at the hems from the hasty dash to the vehicle after the assembly. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the frame, while lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the moors in stark, fleeting white. Beatrice had stayed behind to mingle with the vicar, insisting Amelia return with Alexander to avoid further scrutiny. Now, trapped in this rolling box with the Duke, the air thickened with unspoken tension. Alexander sat opposite, his broad shoulders hunched against the sway, coat unbuttoned to reveal the crisp lines of his waistcoat. Water dripped from his dark hair, tracing paths down his temple. He rapped on the roof. "Driver! Faster! The ford ahead floods easily!" The man shouted back, urging the horses on, but a gust slammed the carriage sideways, wheels slipping in the mud. Amelia gasped, sliding toward him. His arm shot out, steadying her waist with a firm grip. The touch lingered a beat too long, warm through the damp silk, before he released her. "Forgive me," he said, voice low over the roar. "These roads betray even the sturdiest wheels in a tempest." She nodded, cheeks flushing in the dim lantern light. The intimacy felt forced, born of the storm's confinement. Yet it cracked the wall between them. No escape now, no polite distance, no prying eyes. Just the two of them, hurtling through the dark. The carriage lurched again, harder this time, and a wheel caught in a rut. Wood splintered with a sickening crack. They jolted to a halt, horses whinnying in panic. Alexander cursed under his breath, flinging open the door. Rain poured in, soaking him instantly. "Stay here!" he ordered, but Amelia followed, reticule in hand, the pearl brooch glinting like a defiant star. Outside, the driver wrestled the reins, mud caking his boots. "The axles buckled, Your Grace. We're stranded till dawn." Alexander assessed the damage, rain streaming down his face. No choice. The old hunting lodge is a mile yonder. Shelter till the waters recede. He turned to Amelia, eyes shadowed. "Can you manage the walk?" She lifted her chin, skirts heavy with muck. "I have walked worse paths, Your Grace." He nodded, respect flickering in his gaze, and offered his arm. They trudged forward, the driver trailing with the lantern, wind whipping their cloaks like vengeful spirits. The lodge emerged from the gloom, a squat stone building half swallowed by ivy, its chimney dormant. Alexander shouldered the door open, revealing a single room. A hearth, a threadbare settee, and a table scarred by years. Dust motes danced in the lantern's beam. He knelt by the fireplace, striking flint until flames caught on dry tinder scavenged from a basket. Warmth bloomed slowly, chasing the chill. Amelia shivered, wringing water from her curls. "We make do," he said, draping his greatcoat over her shoulders. The wool smelled of sandalwood and rain, his scent, intimate and enveloping. She sank onto the settee, exhaustion pulling at her. Alexander joined her, distance polite but the space small, silence stretched, broken only by the storm's fury. Then, from his pocket, he drew a small leather-bound book, its edges worn. "Keeps the ghosts at bay," he murmured, opening it. Poetry, Wordsworth, she recognized, lines about lonely wanderers and enduring hearts. His voice rumbled as he read aloud, the anchor in the chaos. "I wandered lonely as a cloud." The words wove through the room, stripping away layers. Amelia listened, her guard slipping. The brooch at her throat caught the firelight, and she touched it absently. It was hers, wasn't it? Your late wife. He paused, book lowering. The fire popped, casting his face in gold and shadow. "Yes, Eliza. 5 years gone, taken by fever after our son." His voice cracked, raw. Guilt etched his features, the duty of a duke, heirs lost, a heart walled against further loss. "I failed her. Buried in estate wars, I left her alone in the sick room. Now this marriage. It's duty again, not desire. But you, Amelia, you stir something I thought dead." She met his eyes, seeing the man beneath the title, scarred by luto, bound by obligation. Her own past surfaced, unbidden. "My mother died when I was 10. Father drowned his grief in cards, leaving me to fend against the world's judgments. I'm no stranger to loss, Your Grace. This union, it terrifies me, yet in your voice, reading those lines, I see a soul worth knowing." Vulnerability hung between them, humanizing the transaction. No consummation, just trust budding like the fire's glow. He closed the book, hand brushing hers, a tacit promise, fingers intertwining briefly. The gesture shifted the air, warming it beyond the flames. "Call me Alexander here in this storm, and know this, I will shield you not just from debts, but from the shadows that pursue us." Hope flickered, a quiet advance. Yet the antagonist stirred. A distant clatter. "Hooves?" The driver burst in, drenched, thrusting a sodden envelope at Alexander. "From the village, Your Grace. A rider just now insisted it was urgent." Alexander tore it open, face hardening. Creditors' demands escalated. They claim fraud in the dowry papers, demand your father's arrest by week's end unless we produce proof at the county court. The words doused the warmth, lowering the tide. Amelia's hand slipped from his, the fragile bridge trembling. Outside, lightning flashed, revealing a cloaked figure on horseback vanishing into the gale, an envoy perhaps, or spy. Alexander crumpled the letter. The rival moves, we cannot linger. As the storm raged on, trust forged in fire now faced the encroaching dark. What proof could save them, and at what hidden cost? The rain had eased to a relentless drizzle by dawn, turning the moors into a quagmire that sucked at their boots as they trudged back to the castle. Amelia walked a step behind Alexander, the greatcoat still draped over her shoulders like a borrowed shield. The knight's confessions lingered between them. Fragile as the mist rising from the sodden earth, his hand had brushed hers again in the lodge, a silent vow amid the thunder. But the letter's poison seeped through, tainting the fragile warmth. Fraud in the dowry papers, her father's arrest. The words clawed at her, twisting duty into dread. Ravenswood Castle emerged from the haze, its towers stark against the paling sky. Servants rushed out with blankets and hot bricks, their faces etched with worry. Beatrice met them in the foyer, her nightdress hastily covered by a robe, eyes wide. What happened? The storm. We feared the worst. Alexander waved off the fuss, his voice clipped. A mishap with the carriage. See to Miss Harrington. He strode toward his study, the crumpled envelope clutched in his fist, leaving Amelia to the women's care. In her chamber, Mrs. Thorne helped her out of the ruined gown, the silk heavy with mud. "A night to remember, miss," the housekeeper murmured, her kind eyes sympathetic. Amelia sank into a tub of steaming water, lavender oil blooming on the surface. But peace eluded her. The pearl brooch lay on the vanity, its luster mocking her turmoil. Alexander's vulnerability in the lodge, his grief over Eliza, his admission of stirring feelings, had humanized him. Yet now shadows closed in. Who accused fraud? The creditors, or something more sinister? By midday the castle hummed with urgency. Alexander summoned his solicitor, Mr. Reginald Croft, a bespectacled man with a ledger always at hand. They convened in the drawing-room, heavy drapes drawn against prying eyes. Amelia hovered at the threshold, uninvited but compelled. "The papers are ironclad," Croft insisted, adjusting his pince-nez. £20,000 transferred via the Bank of England, witnessed by 3 notaries. No fraud, unless tampered with. Alexander's jaw tightened, storm-grey eyes flashing. Then sabotage, that rider in the storm. He delivered this venom. He slammed the letter down. Amelia stepped forward, voice steady. "My father would never forge documents. The debts were real, the desperation too." Alexander met her gaze, a flicker of trust amid the storm. "I believe you, but proof must come swiftly, or the county court drags us all into scandal." The attack came at dusk, frontal and vicious, shattering the fragile equilibrium. A courier arrived on a foaming horse, bearing a summons from the magistrate in the nearby town of Eldridge. Alexander broke the seal in the hall, his face draining of colour. "A public hearing," he read aloud, voice hollow. "Tomorrow at the assembly rooms. Accusations of deceit in the betrothal contract, levelled by Lord Percival Drayton." Drayton. The name struck like lightning. Beatrice gasped from the staircase. "Percival, the old rival, your father's foe from the enclosure wars. He lost half his lands to us decades ago." Alexander crumpled the paper. "He stirs now, smelling blood. This isn't creditors, it's revenge. He claims the dowry was inflated, that I bought a bride to cover my own faltering estates. If proven, the marriage voids, your family ruined, and I disgraced." Amelia's world tilted. Public exposure. Gossip sheets would feast, branding her a pawn in a duke's folly. Her reputation, already fragile from the Harrington scandals, would shatter. Whispers of gold digging, of a union born in lies. She clutched the banister, isolation creeping in like fog. "What can we do?" Alexander's hand hovered near hers but withdrew. "Fight, but the evidence. Drayton has spies. He's turned allies against us. The blow landed harder that evening. Word spread through the household like wildfire, servants murmuring in kitchens, footmen exchanging glances. At dinner, the table felt vast, empty, save for Beatrice's uneasy presence. Alexander barely touched his roast beef, his broad frame tense. "Drayton sent emissaries to the village gentry today," he said, fork clattering. "Sowing doubt. The vicar withdraws his blessing. Even Mrs. Thornwood's husband, the apothecary, hedges his support. Amelia's appetite fled. The alliance frayed, support ebbing away. She was no longer the poised betrothed, but a suspect in a web of deceit. They see me as the cause, the outsider bringing ruin." Her voice cracked, the fall from grace tangible. Beatrice reached across, squeezing her hand. "Nonsense, but Percival is cunning. He blackmails with old ledgers, twists truths." The point of no return came in the study, under lamplight's harsh glow. Alexander pored over documents, ink staining his fingers. Amelia entered, the brooch pinned defiantly. "We must counter him publicly." He looked up, weariness etching lines around his eyes. "At what cost? If I defend the marriage too fiercely, it confirms the buyer-bride tale. Drayton demands I renounce the union, or face exposure of my own secrets." He paused, the air thickening. "Eliza's death. Rumors say I drove her to despair with neglect. He has letters, forged or not, to wield. Betrayal stabbed deep. His past weaponized." Amelia stepped back, trust fracturing. "You never spoke of this burden. Am I just another shield?" His face twisted, reaching for her. "No, Amelia, in the lodge I meant every word. But this, it separates us. I cannot drag you deeper into the mire." The emotional rift widened, literal in the space between them, her isolation complete. She turned away, tears hot. "Then fight alone, Your Grace. I will not be your downfall." The door closed behind her with finality, the action irreversible. No return to the storm-forged intimacy. Outside, ravens wheeled against the moon, their cries mocking. Drayton ascended, his sabotage public and wounding. Amelia retreated to her chamber, status plummeting. The castle's walls now a prison, but as dawn broke, a footman delivered an ultimatum scrawled in elegant script. "Appear at the hearing, or forfeit all. Lord Drayton." The separation cut deep, but resolve stirred. Could she reclaim her place, or would the Duke's shadows consume them both? The morning of the hearing dawned cold and unforgiving. The sky over Ravenswood Castle, a bruised canopy that mirrored Amelia's turmoil. She paced her chamber. The pearl brooch now tucked away in a drawer like a discarded promise. Sleep had evaded her, chased off by the echo of Alexander's confession, his guilt over Eliza, the shadows Drayton wielded like a blade. Separation gnawed at her, but resolve hardened in its place. She could not stand idle while lies unraveled everything. Dressing with deliberate care, Amelia chose a gown of dove-grey wool, its simple lines edged in black lace, a mourning for the innocence of their early days. The high neck and fitted sleeves spoke of quiet strength, her chestnut hair coiled severely at her nape. No frills today. This was armor for battle. Mrs. Thorne assisted silently, her eyes speaking volumes of support. "The carriage awaits, miss. The Duke. He rides ahead." Amelia nodded, steeling her nerves. The hearing in Eldridge's assembly rooms would be a public spectacle. Gentry from miles around, reporters from the local gazette, all hungry for scandal. Drayton's accusations painted Alexander as a schemer, her as complicit, their union a fraud to mask crumbling fortunes. But fragments of truth tugged at her, the anonymous notes, the carriage sabotage, the storm rider. Coincidence? No. A deeper complot simmered. The journey blurred in a haze of hedgerows and frost-kissed fields, the carriage's rhythm a steady drumbeat to her thoughts. Upon arrival, the assembly rooms buzzed like a hive. Polished oak panels, reflecting the murmur of voices, chandeliers unlit against the grey light, filtering through tall windows. Ladies in bonnets clustered near the punch table, fans fluttering secrets, gentlemen adjusted cravats, eyes sharp. Lord Percival Drayton held court near the dais, a gaunt man in his 60s, his face a map of bitterness, hawkish nose, thin lips curled in triumph. His coat of faded burgundy silk hung loose on a frame withered by resentment. Alexander stood apart, broad shoulders rigid in his black frock coat, storm-grey eyes fixed on the magistrate's bench. He caught sight of her, a flicker of surprise softening his features, but she turned away. Not yet. Beatrice slipped to her side, whispering, "He's borne the brunt alone this night. Drayton's men ransacked the estate ledgers yesterday, searches under pretence of evidence." The magistrate, Sir Reginald Poole, called order with a gavel's sharp rap. A rotund figure with a powdered wig askew, he cleared his throat. "We convene to examine claims of deceit in the betrothal of His Grace, the Duke of Ravenswood, and Miss Amelia Harrington. Lord Drayton, present your case." Drayton rose, voice oily with feigned regret. "Your Honour, this union reeks of manipulation. The Duke inflated the Harrington dowry to conceal his own debts, estates mortgaged to foreign lenders after poor harvests. I hold ledgers proving it." He flourished a sheaf of papers, yellowed and dog-eared, passing them to the clerk. Gasps rippled through the room. Amelia's pulse thundered. Lies, all of it. Alexander's fortunes were vast, his payments to her father genuine salvation. But doubt crept in as witnesses took the stand. A bribed tenant swearing to Ravenswood's desperation, a forged letter from a London bank hinting at insolvency. The crowd leaned forward, indignation building not against Drayton, but the Duke. Whispers turned venomous. Bought a bride to save face, poor girl, tangled in his web. Amelia's isolation deepened, the weight of stares like stones. Alexander's jaw clenched, but he held silence, his defense reserved for the right moment. Then the valley plunged deeper. Drayton turned to her, eyes gleaming. And Miss Harrington, complicit no doubt, her father's gambling left them beggared. She trades her virtue for security. Outrage swelled in Amelia's chest, a fire against the cold. The villain's smugness ignited it. The man who had lost lands to Alexander's father, nursing grudges for decades, now twisting justice for revenge. How many lives had he ruined in pursuit of this vendetta? The room's murmurs echoed her fury. Even some gentry shifted uncomfortably, sensing the rot. Enough. Amelia rose unbidden, voice cutting through the din like a blade. "Your Honour, if I may." All eyes swung to her. Poole blinked, adjusting his spectacles. "Miss Harrington, this is irregular, but—" "Proceed." She stepped forward, heart hammering but chin high. Agency surged through her, no longer the silent bride, but a force. "Lord Drayton speaks of deceit, yet his proofs crumble under scrutiny. I have evidence of his own machinations." From her reticule, she drew a small packet. Letters retrieved that morning from the castle attics, unearthed by Mrs. Thorne's loyal hands. "These are from Drayton's steward, dated last month. They detail payments to saboteurs, the carriage bandits, the storm rider. Not random peril, but targeted strikes to force scandal." She handed them over, the ink stark on aged paper. Gasps erupted. Drayton paled, sputtering. "Forgeries! Slander!" But Amelia pressed on, her proativa action rippling outward. "Witness my father's ledger," she continued, producing a slim volume from her father, smuggled to her by courier at dawn. "True debts, yes, but cleared honourably by the Duke's fortune. No inflation, no fraud. Drayton's envy blinds him. He seeks to reclaim lost glory by destroying innocence." The room stirred, perception shifting. Women nodded, indignation turning against the Lord, his cruelty exposed, the complot laid bare. a structural revelation. Not ducal weakness, but Drayton's desperate plot, fueled by old enclosures that had beggared his line. Alexander met her gaze then, a reinquadration dawning, his freezer. Not indifference, but duty's heavy yoke, protecting her from his past's stains, shielding the estate from vultures like Drayton. Hope peaked as he rose, voice resonant. Miss Harrington speaks truth. These letters confirm it. My solicitor verifies the ledgers. Their eyes locked, trust rebuilding in contained glances. No passion's fire, but a steady bridge of confidence. He nodded subtly, gratitude warming his features. For the first time, they stood as partners. Her initiative mending the rift, yet danger valleyed swift. Drayton lunged forward, snatching a portrait from his satchel, a faded miniature of Eliza, the late Duchess, her eyes sorrowful. Lies! The Duke drove his wife to death through neglect. Letters prove his cold heart extends to this farce. He waved it like a banner, the threat escalating, aimed to shatter their advance. The crowd hushed, outrage teetering back. Poole banged his gavel. Order! We adjourn to verify these claims. As the assembly dissolved into chaos, Drayton's glare promised more venom. Amelia's hand brushed Alexander's in passing, a contained reapproximation, fingers lingering. We fight together now, she whispered. He squeezed gently. Yes, your courage. It redeems us. But as they exited, a footman pressed an invitation into Beatrice's hand. The Grand Opera in York, 3 nights hence. All society attends, Drayton's final arena. The gancho loomed, a public summons to decisive confrontation. Hope crested, but the villain's shadow lengthened, demanding they face him on his stage. The gas lamps of York flickered like conspirators as the opera house loomed, its marble facade aglow under the evening sky. 3 nights had passed, in a whirlwind of strategy and shadowed preparations at Ravenswood Castle, each hour sharpening Amelia's resolve. The Grand Opera, a production of Verdi's latest, smuggled across the Channel, drew the elite from London's drawing rooms to this northern jewel. Society's eyes would converge here, under crystal chandeliers and velvet curtains, to witness not just arias, but unraveling fates. Amelia descended from the carriage, her gown of sapphire silk cascading in precise folds, the modest bustle accentuating her slender frame without excess. Delicate ivory lace trimmed the high collar and long sleeves, pearls woven into her chestnut curls like stars in a night sky. Alexander waited at the steps, his black tailcoat impeccable, the silver cravat pin catching the light, a subtle emblem of their shared front. His storm-grey eyes met hers, a silent affirmation forged in the hearing's aftermath. No words passed. Their reapproximation needed none. Beatrice followed, elegant in rose taffeta, her fan a shield against the chill breeze, carrying whispers from arriving guests. Inside, the auditorium buzzed with restrained opulence, gilded balconies rising in tiers, the scent of orchids mingling with beeswax polish. Ladies in wide crinolines rustled past, their gloved hands clutching programs, while gentlemen adjusted monocles, conversations laced with anticipation. Drayton held a box overlooking the stage, his gaunt frame silhouetted against crimson drapes, a smug curl to his thin lips. He nodded curtly as Alexander led Amelia to their own proscenium seat, the air thick with unspoken challenge. The overture swelled, violins soaring like hearts in turmoil, but tension coiled tighter than the strings. Midway through the first act, a tragic duet of love betrayed. Drayton rose, his voice cutting through the hush like a discordant note. Your Grace, a word before the interval, if you please. Heads turned, fans pausing mid-flutter. The conductor faltered, then pressed on, but the spell shattered. Alexander's jaw tightened. Not here, Drayton. This is no courtroom. Yet the Lord persisted, descending to the aisle with a flourish, a leather dossier in hand. Gasps rippled as he unfurled it before the orchestra pit, pages yellowed and damning. Society deserves truth. Behold, the Duke's ledgers, forged to inflate the Harrington dowry. And witness statements from Eliza Blackwood's maid, swearing he drove her to despair with cold neglect. This marriage, a sham to bury his sins. Abort witness. A trembling woman in servant's grey, dragged from the wings, nodded vigorously, her eyes downcast. He left her alone, fever raging, for estate squabbles. Murmurs erupted, a tide of indignation swelling against Alexander. Ladies clutched pearls, gentlemen leaned forward, the air electric with scandal. Amelia felt the humiliation crash anew. From respected betrothed to suspected accomplice in deceit. Drayton's final sabotage struck deep, his moral high ground a veil for vengeance. The community teetered, eyes judging, reputations fracturing like fine china. Alexander's hand clenched the armrest, knuckles white, but he held silence, waiting. Amelia's heart pounded, fury igniting against the villain's cruelty, the man who twisted grief for gain, who had schemed carriage ambushes and forged letters to dismantle lives. No more. She rose, voice clear and unwavering, slicing through the din. Lord Drayton, your dossier crumbles like your honor. All eyes swung to her, the auditorium hushing. Even the soprano on stage paused, curtain twitching. Alexander's gaze flicked to her, pride flickering amid the storm. From her reticule, Amelia drew a slim envelope, proofs gathered in fevered nights, authenticated bank drafts from the Harrington transaction, cross-verified by London notaries. A sworn affidavit from the late Duchess's true physician, attesting Eliza's fever as unforeseen tragedy, not neglect. And Drayton's own intercepted correspondence, penned to a shady solicitor in York, outlining bribes for the witness and sabotage plots. "These are no forgeries," she declared, passing them to a nearby usher who relayed them to the house manager. Drayton's envy festers from old losses, lands taken fairly in enclosure. He pays thugs to terrorize roads, plants lies to unseat a duke. Examine the ink. It matches his hand. The manager scanned the pages under lantern light, face paling. Genuine and incriminating. Chaos bloomed as gentry surged forward, demanding copies. Drayton's witness wilted, stammering, He forced me. My lord paid in gold." The lord blanched, dossier slipping from his grasp. "Lies this chit fabricates." But Amelia countered with social strategy. Turning to the box of influential matrons, the Countess of Eldridge, her fan now stilled. "Your ladyship, you knew Eliza. Was she one to despair under kindness?" The Countess nodded slowly, voice carrying. "A gentle soul, taken too soon by illness alone. This slander dishonors her memory." Applause trickled, then swelled, a wave of re-enquadration. Whispers shifted. "Brave girl." Exposed the snake. From humiliated outsider, Amelia emerged respected, her poise and intellect commanding the floor. Gentlemen nodded approval. Even Drayton's allies edged away, faces flushed with shame. Alexander stood then, voice resonant as the final aria. "Lord Drayton, your schemes end here. The law will claim you for forgery and assault. My solicitors file at dawn." He extended a hand to Amelia, pulling her close in a gesture of unity, their fingers intertwining before the throng. The community roared approval, cheers drowning the orchestra's restart. Drayton slunk back, humiliated, his empire of lies crumbling in public scorn, exiled from boxes, shunned by whispers. Victory crashed like a crescendo, cathartic and resounding. The pico de euphoria washing over them in shared triumph. If you're enjoying this tale of redemption and romance, hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss any other gripping stories from the channel. The curtain fell to thunderous ovation, but in their box, silence descended like a balm after tempest. Alexander's thumb traced Amelia's gloved hand. A tacit commitment blooming in the quiet, equals bound not by fortune but forged in fire. Yet as they gathered wraps, a servant slipped Beatrice a sealed note. The Queen's envoy arrives at Ravenswood tomorrow, secrets yet to bind or break. The night air cooled, but deeper resolutions stirred, promising legacies beyond the stage. The dawn light crept over the moors like a hesitant promise, gilding the towers of Ravenswood Castle in soft gold. Amelia stood at her chamber window, the sapphire gown from the opera folded away, replaced by a simple morning dress of pale muslin, its high neckline unadorned, save for a lace collar that framed her thoughtful expression. The events of York lingered, a whirlwind of accusations shattered, truths unveiled, but resolution demanded more than applause. Drayton's downfall had been public, his dossier torn to shreds by the House manager's verification, but legal threads remained to bind or sever fates. Down in the great hall, Alexander paced before the massive hearth, his frock coat discarded over a chair, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms marked by ink from hurried correspondence. Servants bustled with quiet efficiency, the air scented with fresh bread and polished silver. Beatrice entered first, her rose taffeta traded for a practical walking dress, eyes bright with relief. "The envoy from the Queen arrives at noon, brother. Word from London. Drayton's arrest warrant is sealed. Forgery, incitement to violence. The magistrate in Eldridge confirms it all." Alexander nodded, his storm-grey eyes lifting to meet Amelia's as she descended the staircase, her steps measured and sure. No longer the hesitant bride, she moved with a leader's poise, chin lifted, voice carrying compassion tempered by steel. "And the Harrington debts? Father's estate?" She had transformed in these trials, her once guarded heart now open to empathy, her actions a beacon for the household that had watched her rise. "The solicitors wired at first light," Alexander replied, crossing to her side. His hand found hers, not in ducal command, but equal partnership. A free choice sealed in glances exchanged through storms. Cleared in full, Blackwood Manor is yours again, freehold restored, no chains remain. He drew a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple gold band, unadorned, forged anew in the castle's smithy. No heirloom tainted by Eliza's shadow, but a symbol born of their shared trials. "Amelia Harrington, will you wed me, not for fortune, but for the life we build together?" Her fingers trembled as she accepted it, slipping it onto her hand. The metal warmed against her skin, a ritual pure and forward-looking. "Yes, Alexander, as equals always." Their lips met then, a gentle kiss born of love's quiet flame. Not passion's rush, but deep affection, witnessed only by Beatrice's soft smile and the crackling fire. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the portraits of stern ancestors approving in silence. The envoy arrived precisely at noon, a stiff-backed gentleman in a tricorn hat and embroidered coat, bearing the royal seal. He unfolded parchments in the drawing room, where sunlight streamed through tall windows onto the refreshed space, drapes renewed in soft blues, the air free of dust and doubt. "By Her Majesty's command," he intoned, "Lord Percival Drayton is stripped of titles and lands. Exiled to the colonies, his estates forfeit to the crown, for the Ravenswoods. Commendation for exposing corruption. A grant for public works, a school for the Moore tenants' children under Duchess Harrington's patronage." Amelia's eyes widened, the legacy unfolding like a horizon. She had dreamed of such in her hidden novels, education for the overlooked, compassion in action. "We accept with gratitude," she said, her voice resonant, leading the response where once she followed. Alexander stood beside her, his broad frame a pillar of support, his own transformation evident. The reclusive Duke now a partner in progress, his leadership infused with the warmth she had awakened. Drayton's consequence was swift and concrete. By evening, bailiffs arrived at his crumbling manor, carts rumbling away with furnishings and ledgers. Whispers from the village painted his fall, shunned by gentry, his allies scattering like leaves in wind. The apothecary Thornwood, once hedging, now pledged loyalty, his wife Mrs. Lydia recanting her barbs with a humble note of apology. Even the vicar, Mr. Hargrove, arrived with blessings renewed, his clerical robes crisp as he officiated a private vow renewal in the chapel, simple words exchanged before family and staff, sealing their bond. Coadjuvantes found their places too. Beatrice, rewarded with a dowry from the estate's bounty, announced her engagement to a kind-hearted baronet from York, her laughter echoing through halls once sombre. Mrs. Thorne, the housekeeper, was elevated to oversee the new school, her kind eyes gleaming with purpose. Eliza's old maid, freed from Drayton's coercion, received a cottage on the grounds, her testimony vindicated. Neutrals like the solicitor Croft repositioned as firm allies, their ledgers now tools of justice rather than suspicion. As twilight fell, Amelia and Alexander walked the rose garden. Renewed with fresh plantings, thorny bushes pruned, blooms promising spring. The air hummed with bees, the moors stretching to a future unshadowed. "This legacy," she said, linking her arm with his, "a school where girls learn beyond embroidery, compassion for those the world forgets." He squeezed her hand, his voice soft. "And our children will inherit it. Not duty's weight, but love's light." She smiled, envisioning little ones racing through lessons, the castle no longer a cage but a hearth. Yet a soft echo lingered. In the study that night, a letter arrived by courier, sealed with a lesser noble's crest, hinting at further intrigues in London's underbelly. "Allies stir against old foes," it read vaguely. Alexander set it aside, drawing Amelia close. "Tomorrow's worries, my love." The horizon glowed with promise, their kiss sealing the desfecho, a triumphant equilibrium where fortune bowed to heart and shadows yielded to dawn. 5 years had woven their gentle threads through the tapestry of life at Ravenswood Castle, transforming the once shadowed halls into a haven of light and laughter. The moors bloomed with wild heather under summer suns, and the castle's towers stood sentinel over a legacy etched in stone and heart. Amelia Blackwood, now the Duchess of Ravenswood, paused at the window of the nursery, her hand resting on the swell of her belly. Her third child, due with the autumn leaves. At 24, time had softened the sharp edges of her youth, lending a quiet radiance to her emerald eyes. Her gown of soft lavender wool draped gracefully, the modest high neckline embroidered with silver threads that caught the morning light, a nod to the pearls she once wore like burdens. Below, in the rose garden she had coaxed back to life, Alexander played with their children. Edward, their eldest at 3, toddled after a wooden hoop, his chubby fists clutching a stick, laughter bubbling like a brook. Beside him, little Eliza, named for the shadow that had faded into memory, clapped her hands at 2, her curls bouncing in the breeze. Alexander scooped her up, his broad frame bending with ease, the lines of care around his storm-grey eyes crinkled in joy. No longer the reclusive Duke of Rumours, he moved with a father's warmth, his dark hair touched by silver at the temples. Coat sleeves rolled back as he chased the hoop with mock seriousness. "Look, Mama," Edward called, spotting her at the window. Amelia waved, her heart swelling with the simple miracle of it all. Their love had not just endured, it had deepened, rooted in the storms they weathered together. No grand gestures, but quiet rituals, their evening walks under starlit skies, hands entwined, sharing dreams of the world beyond the moors. The fortune he once paid had become a footnote, eclipsed by the wealth of shared glances and whispered confidences. In the quiet nights, as rain pattered on the panes, he would read poetry by the fire, his voice wrapping around her like an embrace, mending the fractures of their past. The castle itself had changed, mirroring their growth. The east wing, once echoing with solitude, now housed the Ravenswood School, a modest brick building funded by the Queen's grant and Alexander's resolve. Girls from tenant families gathered there each morning, their pinafores starched and books clutched tight, learning letters and numbers under teachers Amelia had handpicked. No longer confined to embroidery or etiquette, they dreamed of professions, of voices heard in parlours and parliaments. "You gave them wings," Alexander often said, pride lacing his words. The social tides had shifted too. The village assemblies buzzed with talk of progress, not scandal. Women like Mrs. Lydia Thornwood, once sharp-tongued, now volunteered at the school. Her barbs turned to encouragement after her husband's quiet support in those dark days. Beatrice thrived nearby, married to her baronet and mother to two lively boys who romped with Edward during visits. Her home, a cosy manor 10 miles distant, overflowed with the scents of fresh pies and lively debates, her once cautious eyes now sparkling with the freedom of choice. Mrs. Thorne, elevated to headmistress, oversaw the classrooms with a firm but kind hand, her loyalty rewarded in the children's grateful hugs. Even the vicar, Mr. Hargrove, preached sermons on justice and compassion, his blessings a staple at school openings. But not all shadows had dissolved without cost. Lord Percival Drayton paid dearly for his venom. Exiled to the colonies 5 years prior, his ship had docked in Virginia amid whispers of disgrace. Lands seized, titles stripped, he scraped by in a crumbling plantation house, his once haughty frame bent by labor and regret. Letters from distant kin painted a man haunted, nights plagued by fevered dreams of lost glory, days toiling under indifferent suns. No allies remained. His bribes had soured every bridge. In the village gazettes, his name surfaced rarely, a cautionary tale of envy unchecked. Amelia felt no triumph, only a quiet sorrow for the man whose bitterness had nearly unraveled lives, including his own. As noon approached, Alexander gathered the children for luncheon, Edward perched on his shoulders, Eliza tucked against his chest. He looked up, catching Amelia's gaze through the glass, a smile breaking slow and true. She descended the stairs, the nursery door clicking softly behind her, and joined them in the sun-dappled garden. The air hummed with bees and the distant chime of the chapel bell, a rhythm of renewal. That evening, as twilight painted the moors in hues of purple and gold, the family gathered in the drawing room. Firelight danced on the walls, now adorned with fresh portraits. Not stern ancestors, but vivid scenes of the schoolchildren at play, painted by a local artist. Alexander drew Amelia close on the settee, his arm around her shoulders, while the children dozed nearby, Edward's hoop forgotten at their feet. 5 years, he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. And every day I thank the fates for that stormy night. She leaned into him, fingers tracing the gold band on her hand, simple, enduring. Our legacy lives in them, she replied, glancing at the sleeping forms, in the girls who read Byron now, unafraid. Their lips met in a tender kiss, the world fading to this intimate circle. Outside, a raven circled once, then winged away into the gathering dark, its cry a distant echo of trials past. In the years that followed, the school expanded, touching lives across the county. Amelia and Alexander's third child arrived with cries of joy, a daughter, strong-willed like her mother. The castle echoed with more laughter, more dreams unfurling. Love, once bought with fortune, had claimed its own price, time, trust, and unyielding hearts. And in the quiet heart of Ravenswood they found eternity, not in stone, but in the lives they nurtured, blooming eternal under English skies. As the final notes of the epilogue fade into the quiet of Ravenswood's enduring legacy, let us pause and reflect on the journey of Amelia and Alexander, a tale woven from the threads of fortune, fate, and unyielding spirit. In the grand tapestry of Victorian England, where societal chains bound hearts as tightly as corsets held forms, their story reminds us that true liberation comes not from wealth or title, but from the courage to confront shadows and claim one's voice. Amelia, once a pawn in the game of debts and dowries, emerged as a beacon of agency, teaching us that even in the rigid hierarchies of class and custom, a single act of defiance can reshape destinies. Alexander, the brooding duke scarred by loss, learned that love is not a transaction to be bought, but a garden to be tended with patience and trust. Their union, forged in storms of intrigue and betrayal, stands as a testament to resilience. Love endures, not despite trials, but because of them. What lessons linger for us today in our own eras of hidden pressures and whispered doubts? First, that vulnerability is no weakness, but the key to connection. Alexander's guarded heart opened only when he shared his grief, mirroring how we too must lower our walls to invite true partnership. Second, justice demands action. Amelia's bold revelations against Drayton's malice show that silence in the face of wrong only empowers the wicked, while speaking truth can rally communities and topple tyrants of envy. And finally, legacy blooms from compassion. The school they built, nurturing young minds beyond the confines of tradition, whispers that our greatest inheritance is the light we kindle for others, ensuring no child inherits only chains. This narrative of redemption and romance has carried us through shadowed manors and moonlit moors. But it ends not in closure, but in inspiration. If Amelia's fire stirred your soul, or Alexander's quiet strength touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment resonated most with you? Did the opera house confrontation leave you breathless? Or was it the tender vows in the chapel that sealed the magic? Your words fuel these stories, connecting us across screens and seasons. To honor those who journeyed to this triumphant close, write the word Raven in the comments. It signals you've reached the end, a secret nod among fellow dreamers that helps spread this tale far and wide. And if this Victorian epic ignited your passion for heartfelt dramas of love and intrigue, click the cards above for more. Tales of forbidden alliances in gilded ballrooms, whispers of scandal under gaslit streets, each one crafted to captivate and uplift. Thank you for sharing this adventure. May Amelia and Alexander's spirit remind you, in every fortune paid or peril faced, the heart's true value shines eternal, until the next story unfolds.